So I want 9 2-inch squares. And now we want to draw a diagonal line across the block. I need to draw a 60-degree line, so that's a 45-degree angle, and I need to draw 60, and the 60-degree mark on my ruler is this one here, so I'm just going to mark that line. Now I need to draw a reverse 60 degrees, so that's a 30-degree angle on that side. Flip my ruler over, make sure the 45-degree line is running up, and then mark my 60-degree. That's actually a 30-degree and a 60-degree, but it's the same angle. Match that mark down to the bottom corner, and where these lines cross the square, I'm just going to draw a straight line across that bottom. Fold the paper in half along that diagonal line. I want to mark a 1/4 inch seam allowance. To measure from this mark here 4 inches up that line. Now I'm going to draw a nice curve with a curved top, just going up to the top of this square, and mark 1/4 inch seam allowance all around that curve. Cut along the outside line, and there we have the template for the petals. I want to make a small petal, and we'll use this template. So we want the same width across the bottom and the same angle going up, but this time we're just going to measure this 2 1/4. So we'll stop there at 2 1/4. I'm lining up the corner of the pattern with that mark. I'm just drawing around template, just make the top a little bit more rounded. And they're the same width and the same angle, just smaller. Sew them in pairs, right sides together. I'm sewing the seam where the pins are. Piece of muslin or a thin piece of cotton, an old pillowcase, anything like that, the size of the outside of the petals. So we're just going to sew 1/4 inch. So I've sewn all around the edge of the petals, and now what we're going to do is just cut it out. Cut into inner corners. I don't know if you can see that, just down to the stitches, but don't cut over the stitches. If you do cut over the stitches, just sew it back up again. And we're just going to clip around the curves of each petal. So now we flip it right sides out, and then give it a good press. And that's the one layer done. Now we need to do that all over again with the smaller layer. Completed the second one, and I've just laid it on top where I want it. I'm just going to pin that down. I'm just going to baste around that circle to hold everything together. Now what we need to do is a centerpiece. Take a piece of muslin and my center fabric, right sides together, and draw my circle. I'm going to sew along that line. And now I'm just going to follow that line all the way around. Now we're just going to cut with a seam allowance of about 1/4 inch. I'm just going to snip all the way around without cutting over the lines. Separate the fabrics and cut a hole into the liner. Flip this right sides out. So you want to roll the edges towards the back so that you don't see any of the lining on the front. So I'm just going to top stitch all the way around the edge. I'm not going to fix it to the back layer. So I've decided to do a blanket stitch along the top edge of the small petals. I'm using embroidery thread. Excuse me. So I had to use an embroidery needle in my machine, and I'm just taking my time, using my presser foot as the guide for the stitches. We're just going to sew it in place, so I'm going to use a decorative blanket stitch to sew that in place. So we'll just pin it down, line it up, put a couple of pins in there. I'm going to take it over to my machine now and stitch it down. For the top stitching, decorative blanket stitch, I've changed my thread over to some embroidery variegated thread, and I'm using embroidery needles. So make sure your needle and thread always match your project. I've also got my footing that can do a zigzag. I'm using blanket stitch, and I've got the stitch width set at 3 and the stitch length set at 4, and I'm just going to lower my footing and gently go around the circle.